What if the whole world remembered who you used to be, but no one wanted to look at who you are now? That was the question I couldn't stop asking myself the night everything changed. It was supposed to be just another charity gala. Sparkling chandeliers, million-dollar smiles, and people dressed in perfection. But somewhere between the applause and the champagne toasts, I realized something chilling. No one had spoken to me in over an hour. They saw the wheelchair, not the man, not the life behind my eyes, just the chair. I wasn't always like this. 2 years ago, my name, Cade Sterling, meant adventure. I was the billionaire thrill seeker, the one who went free climbing before breakfast, raced vintage motorcycles in Tuscany, jumped out of planes just to feel gravity remind me I was alive. Life moved fast, and I chased it like it owed me something. But fate doesn't send a warning before it robs you blind. It happened on a Saturday in the Colorado Rockies. I'd done that cliff route a dozen times. That day, a single faulty anchor turned my adrenaline rush into a free fall, 60 feet straight down. I survived the fall, but when I woke up 3 days later, the surgeon didn't need to say the words. I saw it in my mother's eyes before I even asked. I would never walk again. You'd think losing your legs is the hardest part. It's not. It's watching how the world forgets how to treat you like a person. I tried to keep going. I paid for the best rehab, smiled through interviews, joked about joining the seated elite. But beneath the surface, something darker was growing. Loneliness isn't loud. It's not a crash. It's a drip, a steady leak of connection until one day, you're surrounded by people but feel like a ghost. Old friends stop calling. Women I once dated now smiled at me with pity, not attraction. Strangers avoided eye contact, afraid they'd say something wrong. And eventually I stopped trying. 2 years passed like that. Quiet, isolated, successful on paper, dead on the inside. Until one morning a white envelope slid under my door. Inside, an invitation. The Aurora Children's Trust Gala. I was one of the top donors. My PR team insisted I make an appearance. Be seen. Remind them you're still here, still relevant. They sent a stylist, a driver, and a warning. You don't have to stay long. Just wave. Shake hands. Let them see the logo on your suit pocket. But I didn't care about being seen that night. I just wanted to feel human again. The ballroom was pure theater. Crystal chandeliers, soft jazz. The kind of laughter that costs 5 figures a plate. Everything was gold and silver, except for me. The moment I rolled through the entrance, I felt it. That sharp shift in energy. Not hostility, just unease. Eyes darted toward me, then away just as fast. Conversations dipped, then recovered. Like my presence was a smudge on their carefully polished night. A group of venture capitalists I once mentored gave me a nod, and nothing more. No one asked how I was. No one invited me to sit. The message was clear. We remember who you were, but we don't know what to do with who you are now. A server passed with flutes of champagne. Here you go, sir, he said, louder than necessary, like being in a wheelchair meant my ears didn't work. A woman in a diamond necklace touched my shoulder gently and said, "It's so brave of you to come out." Brave? Number. Brave is climbing a cliff with your heartbeat in your throat. This? This was surviving the ache of being invisible in a room full of people who pretend to see you. I ended up near the dance floor, watching couples move like poetry with legs that remembered rhythm. I used to be one of them, gliding across ballrooms, twirling women who laughed too loudly, kissing under chandeliers like I had all the time in the world. Now, now the music felt like a cruel reminder of what I had lost. Not just the use of my legs, but the ability to belong. And that's when I saw her. She wasn't dressed like the others. No glitter, no desperate glamour. Just a sleek navy dress that hugged her with dignity, not desire. Her posture was calm, controlled, like someone who didn't need attention to feel powerful. She wasn't playing the room, she was reading it. But what caught me off guard was that she looked at me and didn't look away. Her gaze didn't flicker with discomfort, didn't shift to the floor. She looked at me like I was someone, not something. And then she smiled. Not the polite kind, not the Good for you for coming out kind. It was a smile that said, I see you. She walked toward me with grace in every step, and for a second I thought maybe she was headed for someone behind me. But she stopped, right in front of my chair. And with the softest voice I'd heard in months, she said, I've been watching you from across the room. You have kind eyes. I blinked. Kind eyes? No one had said that to me since the accident. No one had said anything that wasn't filtered through the lens of pity or politics. My name's Amara, she said, holding out her hand. What's yours? Cade. But in that moment, I barely remembered how to say it. She sat down across from me without asking, like we'd known each other for years. And in the next 10 minutes, she asked more about who I was than anyone had in the last 2 years. Not once did she mention the chair. Not once did she ask what happened. She asked what I missed, what made me laugh, what music I used to dance to when no one was looking. And I told her, because for the first time in a very long time, I wanted to be known again. The moment Amara sat down across from me, the ballroom disappeared. No, really, it vanished. The clinking of glasses, the orchestral strings, the rich chatter of socialites, all of it faded into a soft, irrelevant hum. Like we had stepped outside the noise of the world and into a conversation that actually mattered. She didn't look around nervously like she was caught talking to the wheelchair guy. She didn't glance at her phone. She wasn't performing empathy. She was present. Fully. That might not sound like much, but when you've spent years being looked at instead of seen, it's everything. So, Cade, she said, resting her chin on her hand, tell me something you miss. Not a person, not a place, a moment, one you thought you'd have forever. I blinked. No one had ever asked me that. They asked about my treatment, my surgery, my mental health, my foundation stock performance. But this was like asking the ghost inside me to speak. I paused for a long time. Then finally I said, Sunday mornings. There used to be this old jazz cafe in Brooklyn. I'd take my motorcycle out there, park by the curb, grab a seat by the window, and order the strongest coffee they had. There was this one old man, Miles, I think. He played saxophone like he was talking to God. I closed my eyes and for a few minutes, I wasn't chasing anything. I was just in it. No pressure, no proving, just peace. Amara smiled so gently I nearly forgot how to breathe. That's beautiful, she said. Sounds like you were home. I nodded. Yeah, I didn't realize how rare that was until I couldn't ride anymore, or lean into a booth, or slide onto that bar stool. She tilted her head slightly. Why not go back anyway? I gave her a weak chuckle. Come on, a billionaire in a wheelchair wheeling up to a cramped Brooklyn cafe while college kids record TikToks? That's a PR disaster waiting to happen. Amara didn't laugh. Instead, she leaned forward, voice low but firm. So you'd rather disappear than make someone uncomfortable for 5 minutes? I froze. She wasn't accusing me. She was challenging me. And I realized that's exactly what I'd been doing. I told her more than I'd told my own therapist. About the nightmares where I could still run, about the cruel moment each morning when my brain forgot and tried to make my body do something it no longer could, about the friendships that dissolved without a fight, the women who said, "You're so strong," before ghosting like my disability was contagious. I confessed things I didn't know I was carrying, and the entire time Amara never flinched, never rushed me, never once said, "That must be so hard." She just listened. When I finally paused, she took a deep breath and said something I'll never forget. You know what I see when I look at you? I looked down, bracing for a well-meaning answer. Not a man in a chair, not a billionaire, not a patient or an inspiration. I see a man who still thinks he lost everything because he hasn't realized what's still inside him. My chest tightened, not from pain, but from something waking up. A version of me I thought was buried beneath metal and shame. I didn't know how to respond, so I just whispered, "Thank you." That's when the orchestra started playing again. A new melody, softer, slower. A rhythm that curled around the ballroom like a warm breeze. Couples began moving toward the dance floor. First a few, then many. I watched them with my usual ache, the one that reminded me of what I'd lost. But then, Amara stood up. She turned to me, smoothed her dress, and extended her hand. Will you dance with me, Cade? The question landed like lightning in my bloodstream. My throat closed. My palms sweated. I stammered, I... I can't. But she didn't withdraw her hand, didn't change her expression. Says who? She asked softly. The room around us slowed. People turned. I could feel their eyes on us, their curiosity crackling like static. She kept her hand extended. No pity in her gaze, no performance. Just a woman inviting a man to share a moment of now. I almost said no. I almost laughed it off to protect us both from the weight of public scrutiny. But something in her eyes held me in place. I don't know how, I whispered. Amara smiled. Neither do I, she said. Let's figure it out together. She took both my hands. Hers were warm, grounded, unshaking. She didn't try to make me stand. She didn't pretend the wheelchair wasn't there. She didn't need me to be anything more than I already was. And that's when I realized this wasn't about dancing. This was about belonging. We moved slowly to the edge of the dance floor. The orchestra swelled. The melody wrapped around us like a shared secret. And in that moment, we began to sway. Not with steps, not with tradition, but with connection. She stood beside me, her hands resting lightly on my shoulders. I spun my chair gently and she moved with me, her laughter rising like bells in the wind. It wasn't graceful, it wasn't elegant, but it was ours. I looked up, and the room had changed. An older couple was dancing nearby, the man supporting his wife as she shuffled. A young woman with crutches joined the floor with her boyfriend. Another pair danced seated, holding hands and leaning close. We'd started something. Or maybe Amara had. And in the center of it all, I realized something profound. I was no longer watching life from the outside. I was in it, alive, seen, chosen. The applause didn't start all at once. It began with one quiet clap from somewhere near the back. Then another, and another. Until the entire ballroom, hundreds of people in designer gowns and $1,000 suits, stood in silence and simply watched us. Me, a man in a wheelchair. Her, a woman who didn't care. We weren't doing anything miraculous. We weren't flying. We weren't spinning in perfect synchrony. But the moment held a different kind of gravity, because somehow our clumsy, quiet dance had reminded the room what it means to be human. We were awkward. We were vulnerable. We were real. And in that moment, I wasn't broken. I wasn't tragic. I wasn't a story someone would tell over wine about the brave billionaire in the chair. I was a man, in love, in rhythm, alive. Amara leaned close and whispered into my ear, "See what happens when you stop hiding?" I smiled, and for the first time in years, it reached all the way to my soul. We danced through the end of the song, and when it finished, I fully expected her to thank me politely and return to her table. Maybe even disappear like a dream I'd wake up from the next morning. But she didn't. She stayed. She pulled her chair beside mine, ignored the murmurs and glances from strangers, and asked me if I wanted to split dessert. I laughed. That laugh, God, I hadn't heard it in so long, I barely recognized it as mine. We talked the rest of the night. Not about wheelchairs or surgeries or charities or trauma. We talked about movies that made us cry, about songs that punched us in the gut at exactly the right time, about how she hated avocados but loved guacamole, about how I secretly binge-watched baking shows during recovery because they felt like hope in sugar form. I told her about the Brooklyn Jazz Cafe. She promised to take me there, even if we had to sit on the sidewalk and listen from the curb. At some point past midnight, her hand found mine. And just like that, the man I used to be, the one I thought had died the day I hit those rocks, started breathing again. That was 3 years ago. Since then, the world has kept spinning. The chair hasn't changed. I still can't walk. Some mornings are still hard. Some stares still sting. Not every room knows what to do with a man like me. But every morning, I wake up next to a woman who reminds me that love isn't about who you used to be. It's about who you are now and who you choose to become together. Amara and I were married 18 months after that gala. We didn't have a massive wedding, just 27 people, a jazz trio, and vows whispered under an oak tree. She wore navy again, and during our first dance, she didn't try to pull me to my feet. Instead, she sat gently on my lap, rested her head against my shoulder, and we swayed beneath the stars. We still dance. In our tiny kitchen, in grocery store aisles, in hospital waiting rooms when life gets too heavy and the only way to survive it is to move anyway. She never tried to fix me. She simply reminded me that I was never broken. People ask me all the time how I found someone like her. I always answer the same way. I didn't. She found me. Because sometimes love doesn't show up when you're strong or polished or perfect. It shows up when you've stopped looking, when you're convinced no one sees you, and simply asks, will you dance with me? And if you're lucky, you'll say yes, even if you don't know how, even if you're terrified. Because the truth is, we're all a little broken, but some of us are broken in the same shape. That night, Amara didn't just save my evening, she saved my soul. And to anyone watching this right now, doubting whether love still exists, wondering if they'll ever be seen again, let me tell you this. It only takes one person to walk toward you when everyone else looks away. One person to hold your gaze instead of your weakness. One person to ask you to dance without expecting you to stand. Don't give up on your story. The best chapter might be waiting for you just one dance away. And when it comes, don't look down, don't look back, just hold on and move.